Good afternoon. Continuing our special conversation tonight about the local elections. Dr Lucky Mathebula, the policy analyst, is with us. Dr Ayodele Odusola, the resident representative for the United Nations Development Programme, and Ambassador Nardos Bekele-Thomas, the United Nations South Africa resident coordinator. Dr Odusola, if I may come to you, I mean, one of the things that we clearly need to do is to get everyone to feel a part of our democracy. If people feel a part of our democracy, they're going to vote. If they vote, they're going to feel a part of the outcome, which means that the state has a lot more legitimacy.
Yes, you're very right. And this is what takes me to one of the African adages that you cannot shave people's head in their absence. You need to really make sure we include the real people that are supposed to be the one that will hold us accountable, particularly the young South Africans and the women. The women account for 55% of the people that register to vote in this local government election. And those people, I mean, below the age of 30, they are quite, I mean, they accounted for almost about 43%. So the need to really take this critical mass of people, the youth, as well as women, remain critical. So it's really very important to ensure that they are part of the process, because they need to really be the one to hold people accountable. And part of the things we are even discussing is that after the election, the UN will continue to promote continuous participation and accountability, where we will be identifying the hotspot of quality service delivery gap, and then be really linking people with their council leaders in terms of delivering this quality service to the people, and so that they can be held accountable. And it's really very important, because losing your vote is not only about voting. It's not about voting for somebody who did not win the election, but it's really voting for somebody who, after winning the election, ignores the electorate that voted for him. And that is why we want to make sure that is really addressed. And particularly, there is need for us to really work with civil society organizations. And I'm so happy that today, Activate Change Drivers are part of this discussion. And we want to really see how we can work with them and other civil society organizations at the community level to ensure that there is continuous accountability and the continuous participation of people at the community level. And I think this is something that is doable, because we did something similar like this about 4 years ago, called Let's Talk Batopele initiative with Vembe District. And we strongly believe this will help us to really make sure that we bring accountability in terms of quality service delivery at the local government level to the community level. And the idea of where your elected officials are living outside the council, I think this is one of the things which I think the electorates need to really push for, so that people live where within the constituency where they've been voted for, and then experience what the people are really experiencing, and people can then call them and hold them accountable for the promises during the election.
Ambassador Bekele-Thomas, I mean, this brings to another question. You were talking about what happened in Kenya earlier. I mean, if people participate in the process and they themselves see how their vote is being, you know, how their vote is watched by, in our case, all the party representatives and the party agents, they know, because of the education, how their vote is counted, they know how it is checked, then there's probably not much room for violence, because people will accept the results. So in other words, if we do this correctly and people vote, it reduces the levels of violence, and not just, I would say, during an election, but in our society.
Certainly. I think, it's very critical to understand that, trust and confidence in the system is the most important aspect of the election. And therefore, it avoids violence. It avoids conflict. It avoids, this cynicism about the institutions and the mechanisms and the systems that are put in place, and even doubt about democracy. And therefore, it's so important to have these things right, because, if we inculcate in the minds of our children the habit of voting, it's not just voting our political leaders, but also voting in terms of, exercising our democratic rights in all our lives, in schools, in the family, And so it's really abiding by the democratic principles. And therefore, it's so critical and very important. In the case of Kenya, I want to go back because I lived it and it has remained with me. That violence created such havoc, and the economy was completely depleted, that it took another 5 years to be at the level of the GDP level that we left it before the election. And it did not just disrupt lives for a month or 2 months or 3 months, but it disrupted, the whole socioeconomic status of the country for quite some time. And it took a while to build trust and confidence and to get back the infrastructure in place. And therefore, it's very important that we really avoid conflict and violence. In the case of Benin, it was very important for us, especially me, because I had gone out from Kenya to go to Benin, and there was this effervescence. People were not really happy about the system, and they were complaining, and there was this possibility of having violence. What we did was we did a transformative reform of the political processes, and we started really by doing a census and making sure that the civic registration is put in place so that people, all citizens, vote. And we made sure that the voter registration was there in place, that voter registration not only serving the local elections, but also the presidential elections, and also going on for the coming years. And it was very important also to make sure that the systems, the polling stations were identified, people found themselves in the registrar, and everything was put in place. And, to the surprise of everybody, the election in Benin was peaceful without any violence. And building trust and confidence was very critical. Voter education was ongoing for almost 4 years, and it should be actually, in my view, a sort of a continuous process that we teach, even students at school, even those that are not eligible for voting should understand what voting means, what exercising democratic rights means. The principles, the values should be taught at school and on a continuous basis.
Dr. Lucky Mathebula, one way of also reducing political temperatures is to have systems that work, and local government doesn't work. A couple of things they could do that would just make things better.
Yes, I think once they're elected, they've got a very big tall order. First thing, they must quickly work on their district development model. 2, they must train their appointed officials, not elected officials, on how to govern and not about government. 3, they must make sure that they make their jurisdiction to be special areas of development, and they must ensure that the budget speaks to their promises. And if they don't do that, they are going to come back to the population like political turtles. Turtles, they only go to where they were born when they need to hatch, and after that they wander around the sea until they come back to hatch.
Dr. Lucky Mathebula, nice way to end it. Thank you very much indeed. I do appreciate it. My thank you also to Ambassador Nardos Bekele-Thomas, the United Nations South Africa Resident Coordinator, and also joining us, Dr. Ayodele Odusola, the Resident Representative for the United Nations Development Programme. Thanks very much indeed for being with us through this special program tonight.